Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special recording of Dissidents and Dictators, the Human Rights Foundation's flagship podcast. We are doing this live today here at the Oslo Freedom Forum in beautiful Oslo, Norway. My name is Casey Michelle, and alongside my equally live co-host, Elisha Maldonado. Say hi, Elisha.
Hello.
We have a trio of incredible guests to bring to all of you today. Next to us is Paul Rusesabagina, a Rwandan democracy activist best known for saving hundreds and hundreds of lives during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. His accomplishments were later made into a fantastic 2004 film starring Don Cheadle called Hotel Rwanda, which I would highly recommend if you haven't watched it yet. More recently, Paul was directly targeted by the decades-long Rwandan dictatorship of Paul Kagame, kidnapped by the regime and forced into Rwandan prison, where he was later held for over 2 years on fabricated charges. In 2023, Paul was thankfully released, and it has been an honor to hear him share his story here at Oslo multiple times already. Across from me is Carine Kanimba, who's one of Paul's daughters. Carine not only helped lead efforts to free her father, but has additionally testified in front of U.S. Congress on Rwanda's dictatorship. She has also carved out a career for herself as a global democracy activist of her own. And a few years ago, if I remember correctly, Carine, you were here at the Oslo Freedom Forum speaking, and we had either a wonderful or a terrible moment where it was discovered that some spyware was on your phone, and all of us in the audience had a chance to say hi to President Kagame via your telephone. That was certainly one of those memorable headline-making moments. And next to Carine is Anaise Kanimba. Anaise also helped lead the fight to free her father and has also carved out a career as a global human rights activist. She has written widely on the topic and just last year won a Magnitsky Award for Outstanding Young Human Rights Advocate. This is easily the most incredible family we've ever had on one of these podcasts. And we are very excited to jump into the conversation today. I should say this is being recorded, as I mentioned earlier. We are recording in front of a live studio audience today. We're going to speak for about 45 minutes or so, and then save about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. Paul, I wanted to begin with you regarding a conversation. And again, you've had many conversations already in the past few days, to say nothing of the past few months, and more conversations to come. I wanted to talk today about something you and I were speaking about earlier, perhaps not the most important topic. How do you make banana beer?
It is very simple to make a banana beer. You take bananas, green bananas, you put them in a very warm place where after maybe 4 or 5 days they'll be done. And then you take them in a big kind of a big stuff like this one, and you mix them. After mixing them, you take the juice, because you have the juice, and that juice you just take sorghum. Sorghum, you also have to kind of make a kind of powder of sorghum. You mix it in the banana juice, and after 3 or 4, you keep it, of course, in another warm area for about 10, 15 days, and then you will get an excellent alcohol.
Well, I feel like I'm missing out. 5 minutes ago, I didn't know I was missing out on something.
Yeah.
Now I am.
Okay, there we go. And then you can test it.
The best part of that, it's also a healthy drink with all the bananas.
Yeah. If you happen to come to Texas, to the cowboy country, we are ready to make a banana beer for you.
Well, we look forward to that.
I'll
Absolutely.
take you up on that.
Yeah, the most
That is live. Recorded.
Well, shifting the tone perhaps a little bit, Paul, you've already discussed much of your story here at the Oslo Freedom Forum, beginning especially with the 1994 Rwandan genocide. I hesitate to ask you to share any more details of that time. Carine or Anaise, could either of you give just a brief overview of what the 1994 genocide entailed?
So in 1994, on April 6th, the former president of Rwanda, his plane was shot down from the sky. And it started 100 days of total bloodshed where one ethnic group attempted to exterminate the other ethnic group. And that resulted in the loss of over 800,000 lives. We know there are a lot more that are not counted, but officially they say over 800,000 people were killed. And at the time, Dad was able to save 1,268 of those lives. But that's a short version of the Rwandan genocide.
That's the context we need. An incredible story, of course, later memorialized in the film Hotel Rwanda. The conversations that you would have in the hotel with the men who would come to see those that you were protecting. Was this something you had a broader strategy around, or was this every single day trying to come up with something brand new to keep those people safe?
Unfortunately, there was no planned strategy. There was nothing like that. And of course, each and every day had its own troubles. And each and every day was different. So to struggle against that, against what was going on, was to change strategies every now and then, depending on how the problems represent themselves.
You were saying on stage the other day that it was constant, 24/7, always having to be on alert, always being cognizant. Was it just I'm going to do this and I'm going to keep finding this away, or is it always processing how to keep these people safe?
Actually, when it was happening, at a given time, I realized that before killing my guests, those 1,268 people who were in my hotel, the killers, they were supposed to kill me. Because whenever they tried, they could not go through. So to me, each and every day, each and every minute, I expected death. I expected to be killed. From the beginning, day one, from April 6, 1994, until July 4th, 1994, I expected death each and every minute, each and every day, 24 hours a day. And at the end, I looked at myself and asked myself whether I was still alive or whether I was dead. I couldn't believe in myself.
Was this some part of you that you felt was a continuation from before the genocide, or was this a new part of yourself that you discovered during this process?
Well, it was another Rusesabagina, because the Paul Rusesabagina used to be the general manager of a hotel is normally somebody who cares for the hotel, for his or her business. Now I found myself in a completely different situation, working differently.
You have shared many details of that time here with us at the Oslo Freedom Forum. We are deeply, deeply grateful for you taking your time.
You.
The title of today's conversation is Inside Hotel Rwanda. So I'd like to take things forward a few years and bring Anaise and Carine inside. There was a very popular film created in 2004, only 10 years later. Carine, Anaise, at what point did you realize your father was going to be in a Hollywood blockbuster?
So for a long time, we knew Dad was traveling to South Africa. He told us there was a movie happening, but we didn't fully understand what it was and what was coming into our lives. But he was just telling you right before we began, I remember when Don Cheadle came to our house and he spent 1 week learning who we are, getting to know Dad, trying to learn his gesture. That's when we realized something serious was cooking. But I was only 12 years old, and I didn't speak English at the time, and so the United States, America, was very far away. So my world was pretty small in Belgium as a young kid, but it was definitely surreal when we first started seeing the journalists coming to our house, and at school then people knew about this story that often as a 12-year-old had not really shared about my life and my sister's life and our family. We had heard about, they always talked about the war before the war, but this was something at home, but not the rest of the world knew about. And so it was also a very interesting time for us to kind of welcome this information, but also to process it as a lot of people are learning about it too.
I also remember Anaise mentioned when Don Cheadle was at our home, and Dad has a tendency to hold his arm like this and like his two fingers on his cheeks. Don was just observing him, and like he was just speaking, but always paying attention to what Dad's his gestures were. And on the second or third night at dinner, we saw Don also like following along with Dad, kind of like holding his two fingers on his cheeks in the same way. So it was pretty impressive, but no, we had no idea that there was
I was going to ask, not all of us have the opportunity to see our fathers or even ourselves portrayed on the big screen, especially as children. It must have been so strange.
We grew up because the climate of which we grew up after the genocide, we moved to Belgium, and every Rwandan's life was impacted by it. So we grew up already knowing about the story, hearing of the stories of the pain, of the sufferance, of the heroes, all the people who lived through it, even at a really young age, even though we didn't quite understand it. And so oftentimes people would come to the house and thank Dad and thank Mom, and they would bring gifts. And so we grew up kind of like not understanding why all these people were showing up, but understood that something had happened that was so big that that they wanted to come and thank him. And so when the movie came out, he was like, oh, okay, we get it.
Of course, as a child, you're growing up, and it's just totally normal that people would come and bring gifts because that's just what you're used to. And then all of a sudden there's the film. I did want to ask about the film itself. Did you get to walk the red carpet for the premiere?
We had something that we have to go to school. So during those days, we had to go to school all the time, and he'd say you could only attend some of those events if it was a free school day. And so we had the chance to, and a lot of this was happening in the United States, but we had a chance to attend the Berlin Film Festival, and it was really neat because we had my older siblings. It's not just the two of us. We're our 6 children total. All of us were able to attend the premiere, and my nieces and nephew who were there too. So that was a great experience. But again, a lot of these things were in English, and I didn't speak English. So it was just the idea of being part of the moment, but being in the screen, the images, and you had to kind of create what is happening. And we had the chance, of course, to watch the movie at home in an intimate setting, in the language that we can understand. So, but the first big times, it was kind of a dream because I was a bystander without really knowing what's happening.
But the priorities are homework,
Maybe
then films.
Maybe I can say something about the premiere of Hotel Rwanda. The premiere of Hotel Rwanda took place on 9/11/2004 in Toronto Film Festival, which was a little bit too far from Brussels. To go to Toronto was almost impossible, and they had just started also studying, so they could not travel. But if their mom could travel with me, she's the one who made it with me. But none of our young children made it.
That's okay. Focus on your studies, and then you can have some fun.
Yes.
The last question I did want to ask before we turn to family is, it has been 20 years since this film came out. We are still talking about it. I suppose, Paul, because Carine and Anaise, you were young at the time, were you expecting it to have both the impact, but especially the legacy that it has had in these past 20 years?
No, to start with, when the movie, actually, when I was going through what I went through, I never thought that one day there would be a movie made about me. And then when the movie was made, even when it was just finished, done, for the premiere, I never expected it. Nobody expected it to be such a big stuff. So it happened to be what it has been, but I think we were surprised to see it the way it is.
I was talking to a young woman about the conference and what we were going to do, and her eyes sort of welled up with tears, and she said, I still remember being shown that film as a student. I still sing that song, and I just thought it was a really remarkable moment to just have a chat, and her eyes immediately well up with tears.
Yeah.
So it's quite a legacy that you have.
If I may add, and I'll ask him to kind of explain you a little bit, but when he always told us when they were doing the movie and filming it, he was able to be around, and he wanted the film to be an opportunity for education. As much as he likes us to be in school, he wanted to make sure that others get to learn, and so I think his push for the movie to be an education tool and to be, for a movie to be seen by students and by younger people, I think, the impact of it, I don't know if he realized it was going to have that impact, but this is one of the greatest impacts that we still get to talk about it 20 years later.
Yeah.
But let him kind of share why he felt it was important.
And also for the movie to be what it is, in our agreement with the filmmakers, our agreement was that I was to be there and see how Hotel Rwanda was being played, to see when they were just filming. I was there from day one to the last day, because it is not many times that you have your image, your life on a big screen. So the very time it happens, it has got at least to be the right way you feel you are not offended. So this is why I followed Hotel Rwanda also from the beginning to the end. Because sometimes they would play and I would say, is that one me? I don't think I'm that one. Sometimes I would say no.
I believe that gives you the title of executive producer of this film then as well.
As an education, if you wanted the film to be such, what is the message that you're hoping that young people take from it, even today?
Well, my message at that time is to give a message, to give a lesson to young people that they've got to stand for what they believe in. They've got to stand for justice. They've got to stand in the middle, not play for so and so, but be that person, be a human being. We are supposed to be.
It's beautiful.
If their careers are anything to go by, Paul, it certainly seems like that lesson has taken for your two daughters here today. I did want to bring things back to your family for a moment. You and your wife made the decision to adopt Carine and Anaise. Raising one child is difficult enough. Can you take us through the decision to adopt these two?
Well, their parents were very close to us. And their father was my wife's brother, younger brother. And you will be surprised when the presidential plane was shut down. I was having dinner with their parents, mother and father. Tatiana could not join us for that dinner because she worked until a little bit too late. She felt tired and told us that she was going straight home. We used to live not very far from the airport, and the presidential plane was shut down around the airport when it was landing. So Tatiana heard the missiles hitting the plane, and she immediately called us where we were having our dinner, and told us that, listen, you guys, you rush and come home. I have heard something I've never ever heard before in my life. Rush and come back home. We do not know what is next. We immediately stood up and we walked to the exit of the hotel where we were having dinner. Then we walked to our cars. I remember telling them that, listen, you guys, go home. I will see you tomorrow. But unfortunately, tomorrow never came because they went their way and were killed. I went my way and I happened to survive. So we happened to learn that their kids were still alive. And then we started looking for them. As you see in the movie Hotel Rwanda.
Carine, Anaise, what was it like growing up with Paul as your father? You mentioned a moment ago the focus on education. Of course, that is there. But what was it like?
I think we were very blessed to be in such a loving family with siblings who loved us and the parents who loved us. And we didn't realize, that we were even adopted until mom and dad told us the story of what had happened to our parents. But the fact that we didn't realize that is because of the love that was surrounded around us. And mom and dad always make sure that we don't feel any difference. And that's kind of has been our life with them. And we're very, very happy to have two sets of parents that love us and they're watching of us there, but we also get to have parents watching of us here.
And also, so many people lost their loved ones, their parents during the genocide. And we were very, very privileged and lucky to be adopted and to have someone to be able to call mom and dad. But I also really much, as I grew up and understood, and they told us the story of our parents, our biological parents, and the fact that our last names are Kanimba. We grew up in school with our siblings whose last names are Rusesabagina, and people would always ask us, how is it that your brother's name is Rusesabagina, but your name is Kanimba? And technically in the Rwandan culture, oftentimes a lot of family members don't have the same last names. But one of the main reasons why our parents insisted on us holding onto that name strongly is to preserve the memory of our parents. And I respect that, and I'm grateful for that.
It's beautiful. Makes me teary.
Paul, before we talk about the kidnapping by the Kagame regime, Carine and Anaise, I wanted to stay with you for a moment, because again, you have carved out these incredible careers for yourself at such a young age. Once more, Anaise, have you been to the Freedom Forum before?
Yes, I was lucky to be here. This is my third time.
Second time?
Third time.
Oh, third time.
You guys have me beat.
The hat trick at this point. Both of you, again, are, at this point, frankly, globally renowned rights activists unto yourself. Was this something that you wanted to pursue from a young age? Is this a recent development? Where did that pathway, where did that, maybe even career choice, where did that come from? Where did that first really settle in for the both of you?
So, we grew up watching our dad teaching the lessons he learned during the genocide, going to schools, campuses, universities, governments, organizations, families, and telling them about the lessons of the importance of taking a stand, of standing up for what you believe in, of remaining true to yourself, and then also justice and human rights. And we watched him as the government of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and specifically the dictator of Rwanda, first tried to recruit him to say, come on, work for us. And my father, who's principled, and said, I will not work for a murderer, so I am not working with you. And instead, Kagame turned around and started going after our dad. And so instead of shutting down and saying, okay, I'm afraid, I'm being threatened, he decided to stand up and continue to speak out, because so many people are being victimized by this regime. And so many of them, their voices have been taken away from them. They've been jailed or killed killed, and the list is long. And so as we watched him just bravely going around the world, despite the attempts, assassination attempts against his life, despite the attacks coming from the regime, it's just, we understood that we have a voice, and if we have a voice, we have to use it for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And so I think it was just watching him do it that made us want to speak out on behalf of others as well.
Yeah, yes, I think Ken has said it beautifully, but I would also add that, at home, like she said, people would come and come sometimes seek for help. And I would say both mom and dad have always never closed doors when somebody needed something and needed help. We always joke that my mom worries all the time because she's thinking about people, anybody who has come across her path who has an issue. And so they always told us that when you see somebody in need, do whatever you can in your power. If that means holding, giving a hug, if that means feeding them, if that means helping them to go to school, but never see injustice and let it pass. And so this is something that we were blessed to see every day at home. And when we also go into the world and we see what is around us, we are able to get empowered by what we've learned at home to share that with the people around us.
Paul, what is it like for you as a father to see your daughters, in many senses, following your path and your example, of course, charting their own path, speaking out not only against the Kagame regime, but authoritarianism writ large? What is that for like you to watch as a father?
Well, as a father, when my children were growing up, to me, they were children. They were children growing up. And the way they were behaving was, in most cases, what I wanted to see in my own children. I was very happy over my children. I was very happy with them. They performed miracles. They behaved. That is excellent so far.
Well, you're certainly a lucky man. Not every child listens to their father as much. I can attest to that.
Well, you're quite adorable. One of the things we always talk about on the podcast is how when the likes of Kagame try to squelch dissent or even ideas, what happens is the opposite. It grows. You encourage people to stand up and fight more. So, he got one foe and then inherited two more.
Paul, can you take us to the kidnapping for a moment? Again, you shared many of the details of this the other day, so we won't ask for the entire story, but you are effectively kidnapped by this regime, unbeknownst to yourself. All of a sudden, you're on a plane that lands in Kigali in Rwanda. Was there a moment when you realized what was happening in 2020?
Well, actually, the regime had agents. And they sent one of those agents. He was introduced to me by somebody I know in Brussels, a lawyer, Innocent Twagiramungu, who was somebody I have known for years. So the agent came introduced by that lawyer, and we shared a lot of good moments, had drinks. We had dinners and lunches. It took more than a year after knowing each other. And that man was calling himself the man of God. He was calling himself a pastor. He was calling himself a bishop, apostle, and whatever he wanted to call himself. But as a man of God, a religious gentleman. So the pastor or apostle, Constantine Niyombare, was calling himself a Burundese. And yet, he was not from, he spoke Kirundi. So he was to me, he was a Burundese. And he told me that, listen, Paul, I have churches in Burundi. I wish I could invite you to come to speak to my churches. I have heard that you talk about justice. I have heard that you talk about reconciliation. I have heard that you talk about people being the dialogue. Now, why can't you come and talk to my people at my churches? Burundis also need you. The same message you are doing to Europeans, to Americans, my people in Burundi want also to hear such a beautiful message. Why can't I invite you? I told him that, sir, I'm sorry, I cannot come to Burundi. Because if I happen to come to Burundi, I might land either by accident or purposely at Kigali airport. And if I happen to be there, I'll be a dead man. Therefore, I cannot come to Bujumbura. He said, but you do not need to fly, to take an ordinary flight to Bujumbura. You can just choose any place. Of course, we are not coming to take you from Texas, but you can take any flight to any destination. If you prefer to go through Kampala, Nairobi, I said, no. I'm not going to any nearby country. He said, well, why? Maybe in Arab countries? We said, okay, I can take a flight to Dubai. That is how then we agreed that I was taking a flight to Dubai, and from Dubai, he was sending me a private jet. So this is what we did, and I found myself at Dubai airport. And fortunately, when we landed at Dubai airport, that is when I called my wife and told her that we have landed at Dubai airport, and as soon as we land at Bujumbura airport, I'll call her again and let her know that we have landed. And then I took the exit, met the bishop at the airport of Dubai, because I have insisted so that he comes with a private jet, because a pilot I do not know will never take me in any plane. Then I met the bishop outside the immigration. We went towards our private jet, and then we got before we got into the plane, we saw a gentleman who was the pilot, and the bishop told me, here is our pilot. I then greeted him, told him that, sir, I'm told you are our pilot. Where are we heading to? And who are you? And he told me, we are going to Bujumbura, Burundi, and my name is Alexander. We went up to the plane, and then at the plane, we met another young lady who was also introduced to me as our hostess. And I greeted her and also asked her that, Madam, you are our hostess. Where are we heading to? And what is your name? She told me, I'm Alice, and we are going to Bujumbura, Burundi. Meaning that each and everybody was aware of what was going on.
You land not in Burundi, but in Kigali. You cannot message your family about what is happening, what is going on. Carine, Anaise, how did you become aware? All of a sudden, there's radio silence from your father. He's not checking in. How did you learn what was happening?
It was the last weekend of August. It was a Monday morning. We woke up very early by phone calls. My brother Trezor was calling us. It was maybe 5 a.m. in the morning. He called. It was during the pandemic, and Karen was staying with me in Washington, D.C. And he called, and I kind of ignored because it was 5 a.m. It's Monday morning. Like, I'll talk to him in a little bit. But he called again, and he called a third time on Karine's phone, and he said, they've taken him. It's happened. And we didn't want to believe it right away. And we were shocked by this news. Then we called my mom And the second we called and she picked up, she was in tears. My stomach dropped right away.
Yeah, so my brother had, of course, seen it in the news, and many people had called him and messaged him saying, your dad is in Rwanda. And so we also turned on the news, and they had that's, I think, 4 days after that had already disappeared, where they paraded him in front of the media, and they were accusing him of terrorism, and that was kind of making the global news in Belgium, in Europe, and in the US where we were. And we were shocked. We did not believe it. We knew that for many years they had attempted to assassinate him. So him being in Rwanda meant that that could not be good news. But also, I personally felt that it was a nightmare, and that, like, I'm gonna go back to bed, and then when I wake up, like, Dad is fine, he's like home, everything is okay. But no, we just kept going worse and worse. And
you knew your father had been speaking out against the regime for years and years, but to get to this point, of course, it's a nightmare.
Utterly terrifying.
You both then became the face of the campaigns to free your father, both in North America, in Europe, and elsewhere. Can you take us through that process? Was this a formal campaign that you immediately began sketching out, or was this calling friends, calling contacts, and getting things going there?
But maybe before they say that, can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Actually, when I just arrived in the plane, I trusted everybody, including the pilots and the hostess, and I was just given a glass of champagne, which was full of drug, I think. And I immediately slept. So I just woke up when the plane touched the tarmac, landed at Kigali airport, and I saw the Kigali tower, old tower. And when I saw it, I immediately, almost, my heart stopped, My heart stopped. And then I just waited for them to open the door. When they opened the door, the Directorate of Military Intelligence guys, the Rwanda Investigation Bureau guys, were all of them there. But I immediately stood at the door and I just shouted, calling for help, saying that me, Paul Rusesabagina, I am kidnapped. They are going to kill me. They are going to kill me, repeating my name, so that each and every person who might be around is aware. And that was in the night of August 27th. So they happened to know that I had been kidnapped 4 days later on the fourth day, on August 31st. That is when my family happened to know. But in the meantime, I had been taken to the slaughterhouse, which they call safe house themselves. But to everybody else, it is butchery or slaughterhouse. I had been there, tied. I had my hands from the back, legs, my head in a bag, and then that's kind of locked. I was being tortured for those 4 days. So when they saw me, I was almost finished.
And of course, again, not able to communicate with your family.
No, with nobody.
With anyone.
And not even able to look around me. I cannot tell you that it was this hour or that, because I never knew. There was no light where I was, my head in a bag, my legs tied, my arms also tied from the back, on the ground.
And when we saw those images of him in the news, then 4 days later, we could tell only by looking at his face. I think for Mom especially, those really first images of him, when they showed him that they had taken him, they were shocking. They were traumatizing, and because we could see his face, feel his pain, feel like and that we could not speak with him. We had no way to contact him at that point, or even ask him if he was okay. And despite those images, it was very, very difficult to see.
So how does this campaign then to free your father How does this begin for the both of you?
Well, it was not just the two of us, actually. It was with the whole family. As a whole family, that same day, we got together on Zoom, and we remembered something that Dad had told us since we were young, and going back to Hotel Rwanda and what happened in 1994. When he was in the hotel, he called anybody that he knew could help. And thankfully, Dad's work had allowed him to meet many wonderful people, including people from the Lantos Foundation who are sitting up there. And what we did, Mom, she has a great memory. She gave us the list of everyone because she was always with Dad in their meetings and the travels. And we just picked up the phone calls and just called for people for help and telling them what was happening. And we thought it was a mistake. I actually believed that Dad will be back home in 2 or 3 days and things would get sorted out. But it was a very organic campaign. We did not have a strategy at the beginning. We had to create a strategy every single day. But we also knew that at the end of the day, Kagame is afraid of democracy and of justice, and so we knew that also he cares a lot about what the United States says about him, what the European government said about him, and so from that perspective, we just started making the phone calls, and doors, sometimes would get shut and sometimes would get open, but we had to also do a big level of education to the folks who are around us in the early months, because by then, as many of you have heard throughout the conference, Kagame has already made a name for himself as a guy who is actually a good president, and people did not want to see that there's another side of this president, which is not a good guy. And so we had to get together, and then as a family, each divide and conquer. Carine went back to Belgium, and I was already in Washington, D.C., which helped to organically get organized. But we could not have done this if it wasn't for our whole family getting together and uniting. All the little dramas that we had as siblings were gone within those couple hours, but also friends of Mom and Dad who have done them over the years, who came to us and to lend a hand and to be part of the campaign.
Paul, during this time, was the regime saying anything to you during the 2 years that they had held you? Were you being told anything at all?
Well, when I was in the slaughterhouse, I saw I had 2 visitors. As I told you, it was very dark. I couldn't see around me, but I could hear voices of people being tortured, being killed, just in the next 2 rooms, both sides, from left and right. I could hear voices of people crying, making noise, shouting, calling for help. And you could hear that a voice for 1 hour, 2 hours, and that voice would start now slowing down and disappearing. To me, those people were being dead, or being killed. And I would ask myself, am I not the next victim? So I was taking myself to be the next victim from day 1 to day 4. But in the meantime, I had 2 visitors. One of them was Aimable Havugiyaremye, the Rwandan prosecutor general. The other one was Ruhunga Jano, the secretary general of RIB, Rwanda Investigation Bureau. So they came, they had masks, and they asked me, they brought a small light in the room where I was, when I was on the ground. They unfolded my arms and also my head. Then they asked me, they said, can you recognize us? I said, no, I cannot recognize you. They removed the masks and said, now you can recognize us. I said, no, I can't. Now they told me, they introduced themselves. One of them told me, I'm Ruhunga Jano, I'm the secretary of Rwanda Investigation Bureau, the other one, the Prosecutor General, Aimable Habyarimye, and we have come to see you. We have come to see you, and then we have a message for you. You have to tell us. You have to tell us how you came to be close to those international politicians. How did you happen to know those people? And what do you discuss with them? If you told you also give us their names. If you happen to give us all the details, it will be a matter of days, and then you'll be a free man. Now, do you want to be ambassador? If you are free, do you want to be ambassador? You will choose a country. Do you want to be a minister? You will choose a mini ministry for yourself. Do you want to be the prime minister? You can, or the vice president. You can get anything you want, but you.
Remarkable.
But you will have to tell us all of those details. To say no, just as no, it is always very difficult when you are talking to people like those ones. I told them that listen, guys. Thank you very much. For coming to me, I'm going to think about this, and I'll come back to you.
Such a generous offer.
That was a kind of no. Yeah.
A very polite decline. Paul, you were held, you were tortured, you were held by the regime for two and a half years. Was there any point, was there any moment where you learned about what your family was doing on your behalf elsewhere to try to get you free? Were there any conversations that you were able to have about what your family was doing to try to help?
After a month, I could talk to my family, to my wife only. I was allowed to talk to my wife only, but she could connect the whole family, and I would be talking to the whole family. I had 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, I was not allowed to talk about my situation. We were not allowed to talk about politics. For 5 minutes, I was just to say, hello, how are you? Good, thank you, bye-bye. Mm-hmm. That was it. That is what I was allowed to say. But they would tell me a few things in Proverbs. So I was kind of informed in a way that I would follow what was going on, but I not in details. Of course, at a given level, when the international community, when they started writing resolutions, when the international community, or international parliaments, like the EU Parliament, like the Italian Parliament, like the Spanish Parliament, many other people, when the United States Congress and also wrote down a resolution asking the Rwandan government to free me, then sometimes I would get copies of those resolutions because I had two visitors every month. I had the U.S. guy from the consulate who was a very lovely young man, and I had also another lady from Belgium, also from the consulate, but the Belgian consulate. She was also seeing me every month. So they would bring me some documents, but immediately those documents would be held at the entrance of the prison, and the prison would just hold them.
We want to save a few moments for question and answer. I did want to flag that there is another wonderful podcast that was just produced, sponsored by the Human Rights Foundation, produced by Foreign Policy Magazine, called After Hotel Rwanda, in which, Paul, you and your family share many of these details of this entire ordeal and what it took to get you out. Highly, highly, highly recommend listening to that 4-part series. Perhaps as a last question before we open up to the floor, Carine and Anaise, when did you realize that your father was going to be released? Was it a conversation? Was it a moment? Was it a letter? Was there one time when you realized this ordeal is finally going to be behind you?
Yeah, so I think we knew from the start that he will be free. We knew that he was going to be freed at some point. It could take 2 years, it could take 10 years, it could take 20 years, but he was going to be released, and we were going to keep working for it for however long it took. But a lot of these efforts, the advocacy with different governments, we were constantly up to speed and updated by the different people who were involved in the negotiation for his release. But at some point, a few months before he was to be released, President Kagame did an interview with Semaphore, where first he said, "I will never release him, even if you invade my country. I'm going to keep him." And then a couple months later, he's like, well, he did another interview publicly where he said, well, we're exploring, we're negotiating, seeing what can be done. And so at that instant, it felt like, okay, all these efforts we've been doing with all the people involved in advocating for his release, it's getting somewhere, because finally we're hearing it from the mouth of the person who's holding him captive that there is a path towards our father's release.
Yes, well, I would say for me, like just like Carine and our entire family, we always believed in our heart that Dad would come back home. And that was the source of our strength. That was what got us up every morning. And so it was if it meant 10 years, 2 years, 2 days, we were going to continue to do it. For me, I think when I started when Secretary Blinken traveled to Rwanda and had a meeting with Kagame and told him that he needed to find a way out of the situation, because the partnership between the United States and Rwanda could not continue if that was there. And in all over the last 2 years, I've learned a lot about the DC way of how to do things. And this idea of partnership is very important for Kagame. So Secretary Blinken's trip was a very, very first telling of us that this is going to be costly for you if the Secretary of State is traveling to talk about this issue. We continue to advocate and to also work with the U.S. government, because at the end of the day, they were helping in the European government in Belgium as well, but to put pressure on them. And when we saw that they were being more and more open with us, for me, it gave me the sense and the feeling that, okay, it's not just a dream, a feeling that is going to come home. These people are actually working on it. And I think many of you had the chance to listen to Ambassador Carson, who was our champion in the State Department, and his encouragement and working with him was a big part of this idea, because we became partner with them. And so we were able to learn and to have faith that, it could be done.
Can I just add one last thing? Because Dad mentioned earlier that on those 5 minutes phone calls, we used to speak in metaphors, because we didn't want the people listening, the prison authorities, the Rwandan governments to know what we were telling him. And so the day that we found out that he was going to be released, we had our weekly call with him. He didn't know yet at the time, but outside in the world, the news had already been released. And so our lawyers told us, you cannot tell him on the phone, because he's still in prison and they could get in the way, or they could change their minds, or this could end right here if we say too much and they decide not to let him go. So that when Dad called for those 5 minutes, we picked up the phone and we just could not hold ourselves, but we continued with the metaphors, and we're like, Dad, the storm has passed. The sun is rising. Anything that we could say, like, you're going to be released, but without saying you're going to be released. and he was like, oh, okay. But he still wasn't really sure, because he was still standing in the prison. But it was just funny how we have to find ways to tell him free without telling him.
The weather is cleared up.
Yeah.
So we have time for maybe 2, maybe 3 questions. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask, just raise your hand. We do have a microphone. Happy to bring it up to you.
Hello, my name is Vasil. I'm just wondering, when they proposed you to become like minister or whatever you choose, accept some position, why did you not accept that? Did you think this was like genuine proposal, first of all? And if yes or no, why did you not accept that?
Definitely no. And would it have been a genuine proposal. It was selling my soul. And I love it so that I can sell it for such a price.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Hedquist with the Lantos Foundation. Paul, would you mind telling the story about what happened when you left the prison and what the prisoners said to you? I just think it's such a powerful moment, and it really explains why you still have the courage to keep fighting against Kagame's regime. So if you would share that with us.
Actually, Chelsea, most of you maybe might not know her, but she's from the Lantos Foundation. And they are among those people who have been fighting for me from day one until the end. And we had known each other for a long time, and I also have had kind of a Lantos award in the year 20 what? I do not remember the year. 2011. So you can imagine that she's the one. So she knows everything. So what she wants me to tell you is what happened. What she wants me to tell you is to tell you how I got out of the prison. I talked to my family, to my wife and children that Friday of March 24th, 2023, last year. And they told me that I was supposed to be free. After 5 minutes, it was 3. I was talking to them at 3 p.m. So when I was told that I was supposed to be free, I waited to be free. And I went to my confinement, solitary confinement. Was taken there again back. Waited until 4. Nothing happened. Until 5. Nothing happened. 6, 7, 8 in the night. Nothing happened. I was desperate, sitting on my bed, my tiny bed, and I heard the padlock of the big metal door downstairs hitting at around 8:30. That is when then I just was shocked, and I said, "Why in the night?" And then I heard I was on the first floor, and I heard the padlock of the first floor also hitting, and I immediately. The director of the prison, he's the deputy director, then many generals, military guys and police guys, I saw them, just some could come into the room, others in the corridor. And I heard the director of the prison who just started talking. And he told me that, "You get up." And I said, "Get up? Why?" "You get up and go." "Go where?" "You are free, you have got to leave." And I told him that, "Sir, I'm sorry. In our culture, in our family, we have a tradition. Whenever a man is home in the night and has locked the door, that man does not go out anymore during that night. That man goes out only the following day. I cannot go out tonight. If I'm to go out, it will be tomorrow." He said, "No, you get up." I said, "No, I'm sorry." And then when I refused completely, he called the commissioner general of the high commissioner of the police, of the prisons, who was also outside the prison, parking the car and waiting. Then he called the high commissioner, and the high commissioner said, "Oh, I want to talk to that guy." The director of prison handed me over the phone. The high commissioner said, "You are getting out and you are leaving. You are not passing this night in prison. You are free." I said, "I'm not free until tomorrow." Did your guy tell you about our tradition? If he didn't, I know, always believe that my lesson is gone through the right way whenever I just repeat it myself. I repeated it. And then he just put the phone down. And About 30 minutes later, the director's phone rang again. And it was once again the High Commissioner of the prisons who was calling. He said, there are some diplomats who want to talk to you. Immediately, there was the U.S. Chargé d'Affaires, because there was no ambassador, she was the one in charge. She introduced herself to me and told me that they had come to free me. And then she passed the phone over to the guy from the consulate who was visiting me every month. And he talked to me just very, very happy, laughing, and telling me that we have now come to free you. Then we are waiting for you. I said, now I can break the rules. Where are you? He told me we are at the end, the director's office. I said, why would you please come down, drive down to the exit of the prison? Because you never know what might happen between the exit of the prison and the director's office. So they said, okay, now I can bring the rules and regulations. I then started packing my stuff. Books, clothes. My family had sent me a lot of things, and I started packing and bed sheets. And packing
everything. Even the tea.
And I think, I had people to carry that. Those generals are the ones who happened to carry everything.
Brilliant.
So now, after maybe 30 minutes, we started working out. And when I was working out, I never knew that prisoners had known that I was supposed to be free that day. Through radios and TVs, they had learned that, and they waited for it to happen. They couldn't see it. Then around 8:30, that is in the night, that's when they saw the director of the coming and his assistant and all of those generals with him. Everybody was surprised. They immediately shut up when I went and whispered to each other, saying, now he's going to be free, he's going to be free. And they came and lined up from the main door of my block to the exit of the prison. And when they saw me getting out, they immediately started shouting, singing, telling me that, listen, Mr. Rusesabagina, you have been our voice before you came to this prison. Now you have been here for more than 2 years. You have seen how we are being tortured. You have seen how people are dying of hunger in this place. Please, you are going out. Now, once again, be our voice. So I'm here. I have a mission. I have a message. I am the voice of those people who are suffering in Rwandan prisons. And there are many prisons. Rwanda, the whole country, is more or less a prison. In the prison where I was, we were 18,500 prisoners in one of 19. In such a tiny country like Rwanda. So Rwanda has got more than 300,000 prisoners. So those prisoners in Rwanda have asked me to be their voice. Please, they told me that please be our voice. Tell the world. Now, today, I'm telling you the world about what has been happening in Rwanda. Please do intervene and help Rwandans to get out of a dictatorship.
Thank you for sharing that voice with us today.
Thank you.
I was going to say, let's give them a round of applause. So Paul, Anaise, Carine, thank you so much again for everything, for being here with us today, and for continuing the fight.
It's a real privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
We'll give them another round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Human Rights Foundation is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that promotes and protects human rights globally with a focus on closed societies. We promote freedom where it's most at risk, in countries ruled by authoritarian regimes.